Hello and welcome to the show, everybody. It's great to be here. Really excited to have another host, another member from the Catholic Financial Planners Network join me today. This time we have another gentleman from Northern Virginia. We've had one other before, but we've got another. So it looks like we've got a couple members out of the Virginia network or Virginia area. My host or guest today is Tim Mayer. It's Tim Mayer with Primo Mayer Financial. I asked Tim actually beforehand, so it's like, is there any trick to Primo Mayer? And he said, no, it's just I work with a partner and both of our last names. His name's Primo, my name is Mayer, and so we're Primo Mayer Financial.
Keep it simple. Yep.
Yeah. Well, Tim, as we get things kicked off, I'd like for you to share a little bit about yourself, but I want to tease the audience just a bit before doing so. Our focus today, actually, folks, is on Catholic money. We are the Catholic Money Mastermind, and it just struck me as we were preparing for this call that we haven't really discussed this notion of money, one, but more so Catholic money. And so, what is Catholic money? So I think it's an interesting question, and we're going to tackle that proposition today, that topic. Got some really interesting thoughts that we shared before today's call, but we're going to share with you. But before we do, Tim, could you just share a little bit about yourself and your background and what brings you here today?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So I'm a husband, father of 5 kids. I was born, raised as a Catholic. I spent some time in seminary, college, and then in monastic life before I discerned a calling out in the world and met my wife, a very devout woman, and moved out from the West Coast to Northern Virginia. So Diocese of Arlington here is an incredible place to raise a Catholic family. And I'm surrounded by amazing parishes, clergy, Catholic families. So I'm really spoiled for having so many wonderful clients to work with and building up the kingdom of God just inside of DC here.
Gosh, that sounds wonderful. And Tim, you and I have a similar background in that I had spent some time in religious life as well. And even we were in religious life and seminary at somewhat the same time. So have some mutual connections. So it's just funny how the world works. I definitely know, I think that'll come into play in our conversation today, having, I think both of us profess evangelical, the vow of poverty, just how that plays maybe in terms of our mindset or formation or understanding of money.
Yep.
But it's great to have another gentleman, in the network, the Catholic Financial Planners Network, but here on the show too, who's got a similar formation as myself. I have to say, one of the best parts of my life was my time in religious community and living with brothers in a common life and under similar vows and just, I don't know, the fruits that are born when, it's like, I think with men in particular, it could certainly be true of women, but in my experience with men in particular, just all being commonly tested, just kind of the fraternity that builds or grows from that.
You will not find greater camaraderie than in a religious setting. Certainly in the seminary, I had classmates who'd been in the military and they said, I thought I knew camaraderie in the military, but then I got here to the seminary and boy, was that amped up to a new level. And then in the monastery or religious life where you are making vows for life, potentially, you definitely have a shared mission and they become your family. So it really, I go on to echo what you said. It's a really graced time in my life. And I look back on it fondly. And at the same time, I can see how it formed me for the mission I have now as a husband and a father and as a wealth advisor.
Yeah, it is funny. I like to joke with folks that, the life I live now is like almost the complete opposite of the life I lived when I was in religious life. And we had a way, I don't know if you had it as well, we had a way of saying that when you're religious, that means you have no money, you have no honey, or I'm sorry, you have no money, you have no honey, and you've got a boss. Like that's how to capture the 3 evangelical councils. But I mean, it's like, that's the difference. Now, I mean, I do have a honey. I do have a little bit of money and I'm my own boss. I'm running my own firm. So
That's right.
maybe the Lord needed to, teach me these to do without so that I would be better prepared to do what I do now, in which it's, I'm in charge of these things. So
God has a real sense of humor and he likes to work in paradox. So I think you're right.
Yeah. Well, for the topic at hand then, so what, as we were preparing for this, there was this notion of just like, well, let's talk about what money is. then maybe we'll talk about what Catholic money is. And then now maybe with an understanding of Catholic money, we'll talk about how a financial advisor can be of help to, a Catholic client with their money, their Catholic money, presumably. And so I read a book about a year ago. I would highly recommend this, folks, if you get a chance to read it. It's certainly worthwhile. It's called The History of Money. It was written by Jack Rutherford. And it just goes over, well, I mean, as the name implies, it goes over the history of money. Like where does money originate? Where does the term money specifically originate? And then how has it been used and migrated or transformed over the last few centuries, really the last few millennia? And more specifically, I don't know if this was news to you, Tim. It was news to me as I was reading the book, is that this term comes from only the Roman term of moneta, which was an homage to the goddess Juno in the Roman mythology. And Juno was like the queen alongside Jupiter. And so, similar to the Greek mythology of Hera's role alongside Zeus, she was seen as being in charge of the family and maternity and fertility and motherhood and all these notions of protecting the home front. So you wouldn't necessarily associate that with money, but the term more specifically, money, comes from the Roman or the Latin term moneta, which means warner or warning. We would have an expression of this in English usage of premonition or where we're being pre-warned. That monition comes from the same issue or same word, moneta. And so moneta was like an homage term given to Juno, because she had pre-warned the Romans at one point of an impending doom. And so like in response of homage to her, they coined and almost handed all financial matters over. And so, Tim, I'll give a chance for you to chime here in a moment. But what's really fascinating to me is that money is actually, its term has no direct financial connection. There's no whole notion of money there's nothing financially underlying it. It's actually what underlies the notion of money really is like a deeply sense of femininity at its heart. And a lot of it's all about having a good home life and a good household and having a strong and robust family. Like that's really what the term money comes from. What are some of your thoughts on that? Is that what you would have thought where money would have its origins?
I definitely wouldn't have thought that, and it's a fascinating book. I want to echo the recommendation to read it because we take money for granted now. But if you think about it, what was money for? Is for a way for households, which were sort of the core of humanity and civilization, how to convey value to each other, and so you have to do that at a state level at some point, and you didn't get much more state-oriented than the Roman Empire. And so minting money was a key function of society for their government. And so it's interesting that was tied from the get-go to this domesticity of the goddess Juno, and that still reflects itself in the language.
Well, that's the other part of this too, is that Juno very much was like reflection of the state. She was the primary guardian of, so it's not just the home life, but, the broader community and the state's interest and aspirations and the like. And so what's fascinating, this comes out in the book with Jack, is that financial matters, perhaps maybe I'm just being sexist here. I tend to think of them as being more of a man's domain. And now, quite frankly, in a lot of the role of a lot of my client relationships, it's not throughout this way, but most of the people that I'm working with, at least, it's the male who's taken the lead in the financial.
I agree. In fact, the wife may have almost no interest in talking about it at all, much less with a stranger like me. That's how the relationship tends to start.
Yeah, there's many of the relationships of which I barely know the feminine counterpart, because she's either disinterested or just it's not her thing, as she would say. But right. At least historically, for what it's worth, it's rather the reverse. It was the women, the wives, were really the primary custodians and caretakers of the estate. And I think part of the rationale for that, perhaps this speaks a little bit to the male psyche and personas. The men were out gallivanting and doing their things. They're conquering the next land or hunting something. Like they were the ones disinterested. They were wanting to go, be the victor. And then it was left back to the wife to run the estate and the home front, take care of the family, just, this day-to-day operations, the lady of the manor, if you will, like that typically was, the woman's responsibility and duty. And one might dare say was even seen as like beneath the man to be involved in such, tedious tasks.
Or he couldn't be relied on to be responsible enough with the money, The wife really
I think whether it's probably that too. Like, no, dear Lord, let's not give it to the gentleman. Like he's going to run us in the ground. We'll lose all our money. And that makes me think of a few books. Leo Tolstoy had, War and Peace. One of the Russian households, the male, the patriarch running the home was, had a difficulty saying no to people and kind of bled money left and right. And anyhow, the estate, unfortunately showed it. So, but that kind of gets to the point then, but what's money and what's Catholic money? I mean, it seems like money is really, Tim, I don't want to put words in your mouth. What would you say money is, just based on some of these conversation points?
Yeah. So money really is, I mean, you could, there are classical definitions, of the term money, but it's a store of value. Right. If I have a dollar bill, I know that has the same value wherever I go with that dollar. It's an exchange of a value between two parties. So it doesn't just hold something that I can count on as being worth a certain value, but I can exchange it for someone else's goods. Money is a way for us to exchange goods with each other without having to barter. If I'm a really good woodworker, I need to be able to buy food from you without buying it with plows. So I need to have money if I'm going to build up my society across many different professions and types of transactors. So it's a very practical thing. And it's a very intangible thing in a lot of ways because, there's all kinds of forms of currency out there. From the get-go, it was things that were less likely to degrade, like, shells or rocks, iron bars. Gold coins became sort of literally the gold standard for money. Mm. And then as society got bigger or governments got greedier, they moved to more of a fiat currency where, they would issue paper sort of on a promise that it was worth this, but you just had to take the government's word at that was always going to be the case. And now we're in a digital currency environment, which can bring a lot of concern.
It's a medium of exchange, so it has to have the ability that I can give it from you to the others. So it's got to have a portability. One might say there's a unit of account that's clearly definable and recognizable as to what it is, and that it does have this store of value, which I think is maybe a fancy way of just saying someone else would want to have it and not just me or limited few others. So right. If I give you, $5 of cash, someone else will, take the $5 of cash and not have concerns about what they're receiving. And, that it hasn't plummeted to 50 cents in its value. But part of, the money piece to this, economically, yes, money provides that sort of functionality. But, the work, I think, the notion of money is one that's its primary concern, driving factor is this taking care of the household. It's right. These domestic attributes. It would be kind of my take or my thought is that it's not, it's about the home life, really. And maybe it's about the family. And so money in its broader purpose, if it's not achieving, the goods of the family and what's good for the household, then it's kind of missing the point. At least that's where the origin of it would be, going back to the Roman goddess Juno.
That's right. Because
kind of turning to her.
You have no, there's no good to any individual person if we're talking about macro level economies and financial matters if the actual person on the street or the household doesn't have money in their pocket to go buy the things they need to run their life. So it really is fundamentally a personal and household related concept.
Yeah, and what I found fascinating too, just because we are the Catholic Money Mastermind, is just how much the goddess Juno actually has similarities in certainly our faith and beliefs of the Blessed Mother and her work and role within alongside Jesus and the piety, the devotion that we turn to her because there's similar the cares that Juno or responsibilities that Juno has are certainly similar in terms of what I think we would seek out and desire and wish in terms of the Blessed Mother as well. And so what I would like to just say is that, in some ways, what you could think of this definition of money in itself already is fairly Catholic. Like, you would think it's already Catholic money. And what I would like to probably just say is that it isn't. Money just in its own right, at least classically understood or in its origins, has this focus primarily on the family. But what is maybe also interesting then is where is it now Catholic money? What defines or distinguishes it now from money? And especially if we're already focusing so much on the family and the household, like, well, what would be the Catholic overlay? And Tim, do you have some thoughts on that? I think we kind of came to an interesting discovery here ahead of the call.
And if you take, as you said, a via negativa approach, let's focus on what a Catholic money attitude is not. It's putting money outside of its area of real value and what its role is. It is a really secular thing. We know that there's no actual money in heaven, and Catholics we have this mindset that actually the spiritual life, spiritual realities are more real than our physical secular realities, and we're on a pilgrimage. So when we deal with money, it's with this pilgrim mindset that it's for a time and a purpose, but it's not forever. No money is going to last forever. And so if we put a value on money that it can't carry, then it's going to fail us. It's going to lead us astray. And, one obvious example of that would be greed, where you are insatiably seeking money for its own sake, or maybe by extension, seeking it for the things it can buy, whether that's pleasure or honor, riches, fame, the good things in life. They say the good things in life are free. There is a basic truth to that, because ultimately you have to seek what's truly valuable, and that's going to have a spiritual element to it that money just can't satisfy. So greed is definitely something we want to avoid and overcome as a tendency. Another from the other end, a contrasting vice would be complacency or lack of care or lack of stewardship, not caring at all about what happens to money. I've heard people make this argument that Catholics should not be, thinking about money, or they should be totally fine with whatever happens, to their money. And there is a middle way here, which is, you don't want to be, you want to have this air of, and this sense of being detached. You want to put it in God's hands and let God be the master of your money, so that it can do what his loving will is to accomplish in your life through the money that passes through your hands, because it is passing through.
Right. Yeah. It's not ours, right? We can't, none of us takes it with us. As they say, there's no hearse or no trailer being attached to the hearse. It doesn't come. I mean, even if we get buried with it, like it just stays behind with, unfortunately, a rotting corpse is the reality of it, at least in this time period. So it doesn't come with us. I suppose maybe within the Greeks mythology, they used to have to put coins on their eyes so they could pass, the gate of Hades or whatever, to be given, safe passage. But
we can dig those guys up, and it didn't go with them.
That's right. Yeah, the coins are still there on their eyes, and so you have the grave robbers with all the the Egyptian pharaohs. They robbed their graves because the money that was left with them, or the riches that were left with them, was still there, and they didn't take it with them, and now it was left to be taken by someone else. And so, just having like this deep sense of our own mortality and death, and that there is only so much that this is going to accomplish for us. So, like this notion of ownership to it, not adhering to that too strictly, because it's more of a rental arrangement.
Yeah, stewardship, right?
Stewardship,
we're given it for a time and a purpose, and we'll be held to an account for the money that we handle during our life. So that, I think that's the starting attitude we have to have.
Yeah, well, I mean, the notion of via negativa, Tim. So, and for those who may not know of this is kind of a philosophical suggestion, and it comes primarily from Thomas Aquinas. But it's really one of the things that's fascinating about it is that it's the things that we aspire or desire, the good, as it's just often thought of as defined as, is really the equivalent or synonymous with God Himself. And so, and that's infinite. And so you can't define, if you actually come to like exhaust to me, what the good is, it's like, well, that'd be like asking me to exhaust to you who God is. Like, it's not possible. And so it's much easier when it comes to trying to, identify something positively, is to look at its negative counterparts and start to call it, what are the things that it's not?
That's right.
And then if it's not this, then whatever the opposite of those nots are, that's what it must be. And so that's the via negativa. And it's a really powerful approach to say, look, there's a lot actually in life I don't know what this is. I don't know if it's even possible for me to tell you to know what it is, but I can at least tell you I know what it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like the definition that got thrown out in the Supreme Court, where it's like I can't tell you what pornography is, but I know what it is and what it is when it isn't. Like it's like
right.
it's obvious enough in its own right when the time comes. The point being is that money, what's the goal or proper pursuit of money is in itself potentially inexhaustible in a definition, but like we can see ways in which we would find it unattractive, and greed certainly stands out in one of that. Mm-hmm. Perhaps we've seen it with our own clients, or at least in social acquaintances or other people in the broader social fabric, folks who are just out to get every single dollar they can out of every deal. And, there's just like this, this lack of charity. Like every transaction has to be to your benefit, and, they got to get the better half. And, they're always looking for not just their fair share, but the lion's share. And,
Mm-hmm.
they don't extract as much value as possible, they feel like they're winning and losing, and then maybe even are just obsessed about this and distraught that if they lost out of a deal, like they can never have enough, like they always have to be the one winning.
Yeah, I think we've all encountered that kind of person who is just relentlessly money focused in some way. And maybe the saddest thing is when they don't even recognize it in their own lives, and how much money dictates what they do in their day. And there's a shallowness there that's really tragic. So we want to avoid that.
Right. So good money. So in the classic definition of money, it could be where it's still appropriate for one to be focused on the household, but it's just the household, and they're only concerned about their family and nothing else. And, it really is almost a point of screw it to the world. Like, I'm only here to take care of myself and those in my household, my family.
Think of preppers up in the hills, right? They're just going to spend all their surplus income on prepper supplies. And when the world falls, they're going to be laughing.
Right. Well, and so they're just storing up value. They're just store. And there's a scriptural passage about, the man who built all his grains of it expanded upon them, and was aware, in the Gospels, of his life being taken that very night. So that's certainly not the Catholic variation. I mean, you could maybe still, I think, arguably say money is that. There's a place for greed even, but there wouldn't be any place for greed in a Catholic version of money. And in fact, actually, as a substitute or a replacement for greed, it seems to me like there's a focus and a necessity on a care or a worry of the poor. And that's kind of, we're using that notion broadly, or somewhat generically, but what we're trying to say is that like our focus can't just be on our household and money. I mean, it is that, but it's also expansive. It goes beyond that, where we're also aware of the needs of others and what they have and what they do not have. And, we're looking out, not just for our good, but for the good of others too.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, Tim? Does it strike you as like
they're
defined the Catholic version of money?
Yeah, I think that goes to the heart of this, which is that we are called to be children of God. And so we're members of a family of children of God. So if we're, to use the analogy of the banquet, we can't just be feeding ourselves. We have to be passing the food down to our neighbor, and it's all given by the Lord. Every blessing we receive is given. So, and praise God if we're involved in the creation of that value that we receive. But we can't take full credit for that, or presume that we have full sovereignty over those assets that we're given. So we have to look out for other people. In fact, our salvation depends on it. You look at the rich man and Lazarus. Lazarus is not condemned to hell in the parable for being rich. It's for neglecting the needs of the brother who's right outside his gate, who's getting eaten alive by dogs. This is not something that he couldn't have taken action on very easily, but he was so self-absorbed on his own household and his own needs that he couldn't even look out his front door to see the needs out there. So I think if we want to be blessed as much as we are called to be blessed by the Lord, we have to first prime that pump by being a blessing to other people. I think that's really the mindset that the Lord puts in front of us in the Gospels. And if we fail to live up to that mindset, we're going to fall into blindness.
Yeah, it's a challenge though that we have, Tim, isn't it? We talked a little bit about this ahead of the show because like our role, I mean, we do live only in a competitive marketplace, and the investment opportunities that one is pursuing, but we're all pursuing, we can be stepping in on each other and even on each other's shoes. And, perhaps it's just, even within the church, right? So there can be a fight for the same staff and personnel, where perhaps one parish, I've seen this, to speak to the matter a little bit, where, we're trying to do well for our parish. And so we're pulling other people from another parish to bring them over. And so, it's like all that to say is it's a competitive marketplace. And so on one hand, we're wanting to be stewards and take care of our clients and our families and our own family and do well for them. But we don't, on the other hand, want to be so self-absorbed in our own ends where we become greedy and careless, where we don't care for others and would be happy to see them get trampled upon as long as, that's what it takes for me to get ahead. You almost would rejoice or exult in that. Like that's when it's like, no, like there's no place for that. Even if it's a competitive marketplace, like at the end of the day, we're all celebrating each other's wins here. It's not about me being the victor over everything. Right.
Right. And, you can hearken back to the arguments over, a controlled economy versus free market. We all win if everyone has the fullest ability possible to do their best work and to create the most value for themselves, because then that ripples out to their neighbors. They can do more good with more good created versus a more zero-sum game approach where everything that I keep for myself has to be at the cost of somebody else. I think truly we live in a world of abundance, and we have a God of abundance who really has no limitations to what he can bless us with if we just mirror that generosity to others. So I think that is definitely a hard thing to live up to and to remember. I think a lot of the spiritual life, speak from my own failings, is just failing to remember some of these key points and live them out every day. If we could just do that more consistently, we can really create that flywheel of virtue.
Yeah, I think your term there just spoke to it so well. So, I mean, if we were to try to sum up what is Catholic money in a single term, it would be this notion of generosity.
Yeah.
Again, we have the penny pincher on one hand who's out to get every single penny or dollar he can out of every deal, and everything has to go his or her way. And if it's not, it's just unacceptable. This spirit of generosity has a detachment a little bit where like we can absorb, or a willingness to, it's fine. I don't always have to win. Now you do have to win some. I mean, you're not going to get ahead financially if you ever win ever. So, I mean, some of our pursuit here is to make sure you win, but you don't have to win every time. You don't have to win every moment, right? You don't.
Not everything has to be about making the most money possible. Hearken to Joseph Pieper's fine book, that leisure, the basis of culture. You have to make time for leisure, which is the pursuit of that which is not really productive. And that flies kind of in the face of this mentality of competitive capitalism. And, I think Americans, he was a German after World War II. You can understand why he was talking about that in the midst of the rebuilding of Germany. But American mentalities, tend to focus on this as well. And so we have to recognize the milieu we're in, the zeitgeist that we're experiencing, and to be able to counteract that as Catholics.
For sure. Yeah. And realize the influences. So maybe, Tim, what we should do is talk a little bit about, the work that we have as Catholic advisors. And, maybe before I move on beyond that, folks, I mean, if you found value in this conversation and this notion of Catholic money, and you're looking for someone to manage your money and be a good steward, I think at the end of the day, be a good steward to that money, and perhaps to help you become generous with that money, or be in a place where you could feel generous with that money, consider reaching out to Tim and his fine firm. We also have, the Catholic Financial Planners Network, which is, growing every month. It seems we're bringing on more and more members. And so, this is a great organization, place for you to go and find a Catholic advisor to help you, help you achieve these goals, but to do it without losing your faith, without losing your morals, without losing your conscience, and to, still be able to, look at yourself in the mirror with happiness and gratitude, and be fine with the choices, you're making. We can do both. We can have financial success and also, be fine, sleep at night comfortably with the decisions that we're making.
Yeah. And I think that the thing, Ben, that really stands out for me as being a member of a Catholic Financial Planners Network is you have dozens of advisors who are aligned to a Catholic family's mission, which is to build the kingdom of God on earth through their finances. And so I think I can speak with confidence that any member of CFPN is going to be aligned to your Catholic financial planning goals. And that probably is the single biggest factor of my success as a professional, has been alignment with the right type of clients. I don't look to try to work with everybody. I can't be all things to all people. I want to be all things to some people. And for me, the best fit is I could certainly work with other families. Whether they share all of my values or not, ultimately is up to them, as long as they're comfortable with working with me and the package that I am with my partner and our staff. But the best fit for my firm, I know, is Catholic families who are looking to put all the domains of their life at the foot of the cross, and be disciples of Jesus in everything they do. And they want an intentionality and a focus with shared values with the professionals that they hire. And then by extension, the way that they grow their wealth, and how they invest, and how they plan what they do with that wealth, both during their lifetime and afterwards. That's a big ask for any one person. And so you want to be working with an advisor who is very competent, trustworthy. They have experience and know what works and what doesn't work, but they also have to be aligned well with what you're trying to do. And you don't have to explain it over and over again to them. And then you just get a nod, like, okay, they're like this, so I guess I'll do it this way for them. No, it needs to be from the get-go a really good match in your values. So you have a lot of choices out there for financial planners. Your wealth manager can be paid a lot of different ways. You can find a lot of varieties of that, even in CFPN. But you want to be looking, first of all, for that kind of person who is a really strong match with your values, and then your personality type, and all the other things that make you hit it off with anyone. Friendship is a love of the same things. Really, that's a key requirement of being a friend with someone. And so I try to be not just a professional advisor for my clients, but truly having a shared friendship in Christ. That is, I think, the secret sauce that has really been our success up to now.
Yeah, well, that was very well said, Tim. I loved everything that you had to say there. It's just fantastic. I mean, really, I couldn't have said it better myself. So, I mean, wonderful, wonderful endorsement. And I think just rings so true, because at the end of the day, you kind of have this connection, and in some ways they're really tied together. Is the most intimate things in life are sex and money.
Yeah.
And I mean, only a household's come about through marital intimacy. So we have one, and then once we have that, now we have to figure out how to run it all. And so we have the whole financial considerations, but there very much is like a deep sharing that we have with our clients, that clients allow us to step into. And it's important that if you're going to have that sharing, you want it to be with the right person. You just wouldn't be intimate in this way with just anybody.
That's right.
And so it makes sense that if you're going to be intimate in this way, it's with someone that you trust, but you also believes the same things that you believe in, is seeking the same goals and pursuits as yourself, and isn't going to blindside you, I suppose, quite frankly, right? There's not going to be some surprise or gotcha clause in all of this, that you actually see this other person is working towards, again, the same things that you're wanting to work towards. Well, Tim, I mean, to speak to some of the matter at hand, it's how can a Catholic advisor help a client have Catholic money, not just money, which I think at its heart is about stewardship of the family and having a good household and having a good home life.
Right.
Money is, again, going back to the goddess Juno, which have all these really feminine and maternal distinctions actually as part of it. And so it's not finance and all this big corporate stuff. And it's actually not all that deeply masculine is some of the take that I have, at least in money and its origin. It's about running the estate. But, the Catholic variety or version of this is not to be just focused on our family, but to expand upon that and have a life of generosity and be thinking of others. And to have a degree of detachment and to not turn money into a golden calf where it's the only thing that we're primarily concerned about. We're obsessed with it. And so in your take, I mean, how does an advisor work with their clients where we are wanting to be a good steward and shepherd them towards their goals and help them accomplish what they're seeking out to accomplish, which it's a matter of winning.
Yep.
But on the other hand, also in some ways, being comfortable with letting it all go and maybe pouring themselves out and potentially being okay if they lost it all. Like it's an odd mixture here of what we're trying to accomplish, of like one, achieving what they set out to be, but then at the same time allowing them to be free from it all and not worried or burdened down with whether or not we actually achieve all the goals they want to achieve.
Yeah. As you talk about that, Ben, I'm just struck maybe for the first time at how critical our role is to the sanctity of our clients, because we're being asked to help them answer that call of Christ in the here and now. And so, we talked about that intimacy between within a family, of course, but then by extension, when you're working with a Catholic financial advisor, you are sort of opening the household to that person to say, this is what's going on in my household. And I've had some very, very intimate relationships and conversations with clients who need me to be that sounding board and that inspiration for them of how to sort through the messiness of life and to become a better version of themselves. And maybe it's just, my religious life background or whatever the stamp is that God put on my face that says I'm a good listener, or open up to me. It happens a lot. And so I think the starting point is just really honest conversations that go very deep and get to a vulnerable place where we're understanding, okay, I'm not where I want to be yet. And I need to improve on that. So I think the starting point is, let's talk about what your goals are. And of course, this is just best practice in our industry is you want to be goals focused, and you want to have good planning behind every recommendation you make. We're certainly a planning first practice. So that's important. But if we're planning around eternity, that gives it a different dimension. So, I've had conversations with people who, have pretty rough marriages right now. They're dealing with, some significant questions about what happens if this marriage fails. What happens financially to myself and my kids? Or I have an adult child who doesn't share the same values as I do, despite how I raised them. What do I do with my money after I'm gone? These are very hard questions, and I think you almost have to get the insights of brother and sister Christians to help you sort through that. Ideally, if they are well-trained financial advisors, they can bring the technical know-how to this as well. But it is going to start by having those shared values. So if you can think through what your overall plan is for every dollar that you see come through your household with that eternal mindset, you can really do amazing things. I deal with some very wealthy people. I have some clients who don't have a whole lot of money at all. And it's just been sort of my calling to stumble upon them and vice versa. And we agreed to work together. But no matter what it is, it's this sense that God has a plan for a time with your money. And so you need to be as prudent and as open to his spirit-led ideas as you can be. And so ideally you take a team approach. You're not going to just try to discern that yourself. You're going to have the insights of others with you along the way. And then once you have those insights, then you get down to the practical elements. How much do I save to accomplish, this objective that I've, the Lord has put on my heart to aim for? How do I invest my money? Well, investing ethically with a clean conscience is a pretty tough thing to do. There's a lot of gray area there that you have to sort through. And so it helps to have someone who's not just going to put an ESG stamp on your portfolio and say, you're good. It needs to be deeper than that. When it comes to what happens to my money after I'm gone, well, maybe the conversation needs to shift to what can I easily or with some pain live without now, and so that I can accelerate the giving that is probably going to happen anyway, whether it's to family members or to a business that I want to thrive, or to charitable organizations. I'm blessed to be on the board of directors of a local food pantry. And I'll tell you, every dollar goes a long ways. It's incredible how a little donation can make a huge difference. So helping people to uncover within themselves this natural bent towards generosity, because let's be honest, generosity feels really good after you do it. Before you do it, it's like thinking about a cold shower. After you get out of it, it's great. But you got to be able to think through that with people so that they get to be more comfortable with the potential to become a better version of themselves. And so I think that's really the calling that we're meant for in our profession, Ben.
Sure. I mean, all of us have a cleanliness to our money, certainly myself included in that. And so, I mean, it's hard to just let it go. I mean, that's really maybe the challenge of it all, because there's a concern. It's not just money, but it's, like we recently moved, and so you're packing up stuff and trying to figure out what to keep and what not to keep. And, you can not even want to let go of stuff that you haven't used in years because you're just afraid that the moment you let it go, that's when you're going to need it. Right. And so, we have this cleanliness where we just, we got to hold on to the things that we have because we just think we need them. And so, part of maybe our work with our clients and as an advisor is to be that third party, or that third network, if you will. You've kind of alluded to that a little bit, Tim. I mean, some of the challenges and the problems that we do come across with our clients, the husband and wife or the couple may not have, the means to answer that question in their own right, just because it's a big question just for the two of them. But even bringing it to me, I may not have the answer, or even with my team, there are times in which I have to kick things out to an even broader network to get help on. So
That's right.
not to underestimate the challenges or problems that people come into that can be rather intricate and complicated. Yes. The value of having an advisor just to help to separate us from that cleanliness, to have a third party stepping in and giving us that break. It's the sort of nudge that we kind of need. And and maybe it's just that point of detachment, right? Because as much as we care about your money and doing well with it, at the end of the day, it's not our money too. And so it's easier for us to tell you what to do with it than what you might otherwise. Almost, again, we just recently moved. So, a friend of mine telling me like, you really don't need this anymore. I'd be like, okay, you're right. I mean, just enough to get me over that bump to say, I'll be fine. I can let that go too. And it's a funny thing, but we need that, right? That's right. Just humans. Like the struggles we can have really can be turned rather small when we get the benefit and the strength of other people coming together in our situation. And so that might be just the best plug I could have, folks. Actually, if you're not working with an advisor and you're looking for one and a reason to work with them, and there's a lot of technical proficiency that we're hoping to bring to the table. And, the hope would be that minimally that technical proficiency will ultimately enhance your situation in such a way that the service pays for itself. But even if the service doesn't pay for itself, which I do think is hard to quantify and at least hinge the service upon, that would probably be a mistake. Just having these points of a third party be able to nudge you along in a way that you wouldn't do to yourself, because it's, you don't, if we did it ourselves, you wouldn't need it, I suppose. I mean, I think I'm trying to get it, need that nudging. Yeah. That's one of the biggest ways that an advisor can deliver value. And maybe, to the point that you were getting at a moment ago, Tim, with getting you to live generously and receiving the benefits of living generously, whereas perhaps you wouldn't because you're still too concerned or too worried and, too fearful that
that's right.
That's not a possibility for you. So, folks, it's been great to have you here on the show today. Tim, it's been great to have you too. I've loved every bit of this. I think it was about time that we talk about Catholic money. We are the Catholic Money Mastermind after all. And so I think we did, I think we did a good job. Do you have any closing thoughts in your mind for what just kind of encapsulates Catholic money?
Yeah, I think it's all about generosity and putting everything in the service of the Lord with a joyful spirit, understanding that ultimately we can't take ourselves too seriously. There's a middle path between being blasé about it and just continually straining to get every dollar we can. And that the rootedness of that in our Catholic tradition is to seek the virtuous life, and working with a great Catholic financial advisor can help you get there.
Yeah, well, fantastic. Well, folks, be sure to check out the Catholic Financial Planners Network. Also, be sure to check out Tim and his financial firm, which is Primo Mayer, right? Primo Mayer Financial in Northern Virginia. Right. If someone wanted to reach out to you, Tim, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, I'm assuming the show notes will have a link to our website, or you can just Google my name, Tim Mayer. And we work with clients around the country. Of course, we love seeing people face to face whenever possible.
Awesome. Well, folks, be sure to reach out to Tim. Great guy. It's not every day you get to work with someone who's a wealth manager, but also at one point was a monk, living the vow of poverty. So, I mean, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, so, an extra bonus and another reason to reach out to Tim and his firm. But folks, I hope you found the show to be awesome. We're looking to deliver value. Please, if you have any thoughts or topics that you'd like to share with us in terms of future shows, reach out, let us know. We have info at Catholic FPN. That's info at Catholic FPN, or Catholic CFPN, but it's not with two C's, just CatholicFPN.com. Reach out, give us some suggestions. We'd love to hear from you. And in between now and then, God's blessings to each and every one of you. Thanks so much.